So I think you're getting into the right angle here with the age and gender definitely influencing. I think not only about that the media is giving so much attention to Sanna Marin, but also how it's framed, right? There's this immediate connection between dancing and drugs all of a sudden. And I think there's quite a lot of research evidence showing that female politicians do tend to get different types of media coverage than their male counterparts do, with specific attention to their appearance, their family, in this case then on kind of the private life that the prime minister is living. And I would say that maybe with male politicians, especially from here in the UK, you very often see during the campaign trail where they go into pubs trying to draw pints there, look authentic. One could argue that similarly, a 30-year-old woman having a party with friends could be seen as something authentic, but that's not exactly how the coverage so far has been.
Which is interesting because, in fact, authentic is the very term that she has really ascribed to herself. She has said she wanted to be very authentic, and her style has been very authentic. It has served her very well up until this point. I mean, it's inevitable that any human is going to make some mistakes potentially, but does it necessarily get the kind of attention when we think of what Boris Johnson did, you know, flouting the rules, his own rules during lockdown, and how long it took for him to be accountable?
I mean, I think that's interesting is that we're even like discussing this as a mistake, right? It was during her, let's say, free time, as much as free time politicians have, and somehow that, older male politicians in pubs or having a drink with voters is something that we accept, but having a younger politician partying is not. And I think here the real issue is that in the world, we're not really used to having a lot of 30-something prime ministers and presidents, which also then lends to to what extent younger people are even also represented in politics. That I think with Sanna Marin, with her authenticity, is trying to do is that younger voters in particular can relate to her. And at the same time, there's this very fine line that she needs to balance because being a woman, being younger, she's definitely held to a different standard than maybe some more older politician where that's considered being charismatic and being normal, right?
Yeah, that's such a good point you make. You know, when I see her, I think so much of the New Zealand Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, who, you know, is seen internationally at least as really hardly putting a foot wrong throughout her terms. Domestically, though, she comes in for awfully sexist attacks, which does make you wonder why, when you are seen to be doing such a good job, as has the Finnish Prime Minister, why this still happens in 2022.
I mean, ultimately, I think in 2022, we're still dealing with gendered role expectations and stereotypes, both when it comes to the media coverage, but also in terms of voter attitudes. My own research, but also broader research on gender and political leadership, very clearly evidences that the expectations voters, media have of female politicians are different, and they are held to greater scrutiny, which can also then have an impact of their willingness to actually participate in politics, to run for office and to have long careers, either in legislatures or in cabinet office. And I think that's where, as a society, we really need to look in the mirror of do we want to exclude half of the society potentially, or make it harder for them, that decision of run for office?
And that's exactly the point that the New Zealand Prime Minister made when talking about this furore over the Finnish Prime Minister, that if, you know, women do get that kind of attention, it does deter them from joining the fray, because it is such a sort of scrutiny that the men often don't. And I mean, I've got this image of Vladimir Putin shirtless riding a horse, defiantly not apologising. You know, it just does seem as if there is, as you point out, different standards.
Yeah, that's a great example, obviously. I mean, we also add the authoritarian dimension to it. Maybe a democratic leader wouldn't definitely do what Putin has done. But I think with Jacinda are there, and also the example of how much turmoil there was in the media around her having a baby while in office is again, it's one for women in politics, but also then younger people in politics, right? So that usually we're used to having politicians who are older, who are male, who don't go to party, who don't have children while they're in office, and I think this is something that we have a lot of attention in research, in academic research, trying to figure out how voters react to that.
You know, you're living in the UK at the moment. How have you observed Liz Truss on the campaign trail? She seems to be fashioning herself very much after Margaret Thatcher, this kind of strong authoritarian figure. Should she be still trying to do that now, you know, in this day and age?
I mean, this is a difficult question because, as you say, is that it's not necessarily only the media attention on how she looks, it's also politicians themselves are trying to make certain kind of links, right? And they're not completely passive. Personally, she probably has some research into whether that is a good campaign strategy or not. I assume it's something that from a gender and politics perspective, it's not necessarily good, especially for new people coming into the office. But that's her choice on the campaign trail.
So we'll see how it plays out for her. Lovely to have you on. Thank you so much.
Thank you.